All right, we're gonna kick it off and rock and roll so that we can be respectful of everybody's time tonight, because I know some of y'all may still need to have dinner and those kind of things. So we're gonna jump on into it. I am Cassie Street. I am with Reach Council over in Midlothian. If you have not heard of Reach before, we're a nonprofit, again, located in Midlothian, that provides evidence-based prevention education as well as recovery support services in the schools, communities of Ellis County and Johnson County. So that's who we are. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you our mission is to encourage and support safe and healthy choices vital to the well-being of our youth, families, and community. So we've been doing this for about 35 years. We were founded in Midlothian by citizens of Midlothian who had a concern about growing substance use issues. And so prevention has been the mainstay of our purpose and our mission ever since. All right, so tonight we get to talk about current drug trends in youth. All right, so but before we really talk about the current drug trends in youth, I really want to take a minute to discuss why, or one of the reasons why, teen substance use is such an issue, and that is the teen brain. Once upon a time, if you ask someone, hey, what age does the brain start developing? They would say 18. Scientists believed that by the age of 10, that the teen brain was just an adult brain with just fewer miles on it. However, we now know these days that the brain continues to develop until about the age of 25. Starting at age 12, when our kids kind of go into puberty and they start acting kind of crazy and think they've lost their mind, their brain has entered into a time where it's working on the last update for adulthood. And the last part of the brain to develop is the part that is responsible for making decisions, planning, impulse control, personality, mood, attention. This is called the prefrontal cortex. All right? So basically, it's responsible for all of those things, all that, executive functioning, planning, all that stuff, all those things that basically teenagers are not so great at doing. Okay? This part of the brain is what is developing at this point in their life. Now, why this is important, and what this has to do with substance use, is our brains are really cool. They're super adaptive. They will change and wire themselves differently based on the environment. Okay, so in terms of what they're exposed to in their home, in their communities, in their schools, home environment, all those different things, they'll change in response to stressors. So major life events, sometimes we call those traumatic events. Two people can have very different experiences with the same situation. All right, and they can change in response to chemicals. All right, a developing brain is more greatly influenced by outside chemicals than a fully developed adult brain. All right, teenagers are more prone to addiction, all right, than adults. This is partly due because of the fact that growing brain right now is wired for learning, and addiction is a learning disease. So here's what this kind of looks like. All right, so we have up here, I have 10 people in my little pyramid. And so when we talk about addiction, we often look at what is the age of first onset of use. So if we were to pretend that all 10 of these people are adults, did I do my math right? Okay, are adults with a diagnosed substance use disorder, right? Those are our fancy words. They are struggling with a substance use issue, right? If we were to walk up to them and say, hey, at what age did you first start using substances? 4 out of those 10 would have started using substances by the age of 15 and developed a substance use issue by the time they're an adult. Okay, well, we kept asking them and say, hey, what age did you develop substance use issue? 3 out of 10, 30% would have started between the ages of 15 and 17 and developed a substance use issue. Now, so look at this. We have 70% of our people who have diagnosed substance use issues as adults started before they were old enough to enlist in the military. Now, on the opposite end, how many do you guys think started around the legal age of 21 or 22 and still developed a problem? What do y'all think? see 2, I see 1. It's 1. Okay, 10%. There's a huge difference in those numbers. So the research shows us that the later someone starts using substances, the less likely they are to develop a problem. On the opposite end, the earlier someone starts or exposes their brain to substance use, the more likely they are to develop an issue. All right, so the teen brain, it's growing, it's doing amazing things, and we have to protect it. So, which is why substance use in teens is a big deal. So let's talk about some current trends. First of all, we know COVID did not do us any favors in the substance use and mental health realm. 0 issues. Nearly a 2021 study showed that 1 in 3 high school students were engaging in more substance use than they were pre-COVID. So it did not do us any favors at all. So one of the most popular things in teenagers right now is vaping. I mean, we're in a school district, you know vaping is an issue. Vapes, if you don't know, were originally called electronic cigarettes when they came out. They are an electronic device that has a chamber that heats a fluid that is then inhaled and then exhaled. That fluid can be nicotine, it can contain THC, it can contain CBD, it can contain Delta 8. You can even vape methamphetamine and pretty much anything else out there today. So, let's talk about that. Oh, what's popular, first of all? So, vapes and what's popular changes with the season. All right. The brands and what's available will determine what is popular and used. Like this picture is the 2022 popular ones. I have a colleague at a campus in another county. She will, from time to time, give me what's been confiscated on her campus, and I will see elf bars, and I will see, all kinds of different ones. I can't even think of all of them at the moment. And so they will change with the seasons. All right. A couple years ago, it was Enjoys and Juuls, right? All right. So let's talk about what's in them. Nicotine. Nicotine is still the most popular substance that you use for vaping. All right. You guys know nicotine is highly addictive. It takes us little 3 to 5 exposures for the brain to say, "Oh, I like that," and to start craving nicotine. All right. And research shows it takes someone who's become addicted to nicotine upwards of 30 attempts before they successfully quit. So it's super easy to get hooked on, and it's super hard to quit. Right. Current statistics, and I think these are way underreported, show that 4 out of 100 middle schoolers report current use of a nicotine product. If you walk in any middle school in any county in the state of Texas, you will know that that number is probably underreported. All right. And it says 1 out of 6 high schoolers report current usage. Again, I think this number is higher, but because these are self-reports, this is where we're at. When they are vaping nicotine or anything else, it's not a water vapor. A lot of times when these first came out, vapes were initially marketed as being healthy and safer than cigarettes. We have since learned, what many of us already knew, that this was not the truth. All right. So vapes contain lots of different chemicals. All right. They contain obviously nicotine or whatever other substance that is in there. Nicotine, in addition to being addictive, is actually what causes heart damage. It's a vasoconstrictor, makes the blood vessel smaller. It's also a stimulant, makes the heart beat faster. And nicotine is one of the leading causes of heart disease. It also, that vapor contains cancer-causing chemicals like benzodiazepine. Okay, benzodiazepine is one of the major chemicals that's in tobacco products and a major cancer-causing chemical. That vapor also contains heavy metals such as nickel, tin, and lead. Some of those are created in the manufacturing process. Some of those come from the breakdown of the heating element. And then they contain the flavorings called diacetyl. This is what makes them taste good. All right, this is how they get those flavorings. And diacetyl, okay, is what has been linked to causing something called popcorn lung in those who vape. All right, it's where the bronchial tubes of the lungs will inflame, making it hard to breathe and can cause some long-term damage. Unfortunately, we don't have long-term statistics yet on the impacts of vaping because vaping is only been around for about 15 years in its current form and fashion. So it's going to take us another 5 to 10 years before we really see the health impacts of this. I will say that smoking is bad. I think smoking is awful. I think vaping is worse in a lot of ways, because if you think about with a cigarette, someone who smokes a cigarette, they pick up a cigarette, they light it, they smoke it, it has a beginning and has an end, right? They want another hit of nicotine after that cigarette, they have to light another cigarette. With kids who vape, or anyone who vapes, they pick it up, they put it down, they pick it up, they put it down, they pick it up, they put it down, okay? The fluid, the chambers that contain that nicotine contain anywhere from the equivalent of 10 packs of cigarettes to or more. And so if you have a kid who's going through a vape a week, they're going through a minimum of 10 packs of cigarettes a week. So the nicotine addiction is much higher. All right. Ooh, you have questions about nicotine? We pretty much know this. We got this. All right. Let's talk about THC. All right, THC. This is what's more commonly known as marijuana. We're going to focus on it in the vape form today. We're not going to necessarily talk about the plant form of weed. We'll do some comparisons, but we're going to talk about THC this way. This is the naturally occurring psychoactive chemical in marijuana. All right, it's what causes someone to feel high when someone takes in THC. They have feelings associated with pleasure. They have issues with memory and concentration. It can affect coordination, sensory, and time perception. What happens with THC is it does make someone feel high. It also triggers the release of a large amount of dopamine. So if we pretend for a minute that our normal dopamine levels are here. Hey, I found 20 bucks in the washing machine. Woohoo, I got to hit a dopamine, right? I had a great first date with somebody. Woohoo, I got to hit a dopamine, right? All these things. My kid got an A on their science test. Woohoo, I'm really excited. I got to hit a dopamine. These are the naturally occurring chemical that rewards us for doing things. So what happens when we use substances like THC is it releases a large amount of dopamine. Okay? When we do that once, our brain goes, that's out of whack, Jack, right? But the thing that's weird, but when we do it, our teen brains do it again and again and again, our brain goes, oh, that's out of whack, Jack, I gotta fix that. And what was our expectation for dopamine, which was here, now is here. Well, 20 bucks in the washing machine still feels good, but doesn't feel as good because I need this much dopamine to feel good, right? And so that's where that addiction process comes in. And as we get used to the amount of THC, we now require more to feel good, and this is that process of tolerance. Okay. Long-term use of THC in marijuana has impacts on learning, memory, concentration, and even mental health. We often see these in our own schools and our own kids. It's important to understand that the THC, the marijuana on the market, is not your grandfather's marijuana, all right? What we would call the THC concentrations in marijuana products has been steadily increasing since the 1990s, right? In 1999 or 1995, the average concentration of THC in marijuana, the plant in the bud, right, was about 4%. We developed hydroponics and we steadily bred marijuana to become stronger and stronger. So by 2019, the average flower marijuana was about 14%. You'll get some reports up to 30% for the plant-based marijuana, all right? When we talk about THC concentrates, which is what is in vape pens, okay, these have THC levels of anywhere from 70 to 90+%. So let's think about this. If we were at 4% in the 90s and we're at 90% now, is that a huge difference? It's astronomical. And we don't know what the impact of this is going to be when someone's been inputting that level of THC into their brain every day for 5 years, for 10 years, for 15 years. We don't know what the long-term impacts are going to be because it's only been in the last 5 to 10 years that THC concentrates have become widely available. So, but this is what's in those vape pens that are found in our schools. Okay. You see the graph? So let's talk about how it's used. All right, so this is a visual device. We talked about the nicotine pens. The THC pens or the THC vapes look a lot like the nicotine ones. They're almost indistinguishable between them. I had a colleague, again, who works with kids who are in an alternative setting in another county, and she had a kid, she busted him with a vape at school, and he told her it was a nicotine vape. She, by looking at it, could not tell any difference on it. There was no marking, there was no indicator. It was flavored and scented, right? And she could not, by looking at it, tell that it was not a nicotine vape. It was after some research that she realized that it was a THC vape. Right? And so nowadays they will come looking just like the nicotine ones. Once upon a time, they used to look more like this one kind of here in the middle, or this one right here, these pen style ones. But like I said, nowadays they're looking more just like our nicotine ones. They do have kind of a distinct odor. They still, you guys ever have known what marijuana smells like? Marijuana has a kind of a distinct skunky smell. They still can have a little bit of that scent if they're vaping it in a vape. But it doesn't last very long, and it's oftentimes overshadowed by whatever it's being used to flavor it with. CBD. CBD can be in vapes. If you don't know, CBD is cannabinol. It is derived from the hemp plant. It is in Texas. It is approved for use in seizure patients, and people use it for different reasons. There's an estimate about 14% of adults use CBD, but it doesn't make you high like THC does. Because it doesn't make you high, it's not particularly popular with adolescents. So we don't see a lot of it. All right, THC derivatives. Y'all heard of Delta 8s? Okay, we got Delta 8s, we got Delta 10s, we got THCVs, we got THCPs. Okay. In the last 2 years, THC derivatives have hit the market. These are vape. They're put in vapes. They are derivatives of actually the CBD plant or from the hemp plant where they extract out the CBD and they put it through a procedure in a lab to change the molecule structure. There's a lot of chemistry involved in this, a lot of synthesizing to make it 1 to 2 molecules different than your THC Delta 9. So technically in the state of Texas, because it's derived from hemp, from the hemp plant, it's legal because hemp is legal in the state of Texas, but it gives them a high similar to THC. It is primarily synthetic because they are having to create this in a lab to get it to do what it's supposed to do. And they have new derivatives, seems like every other month. So the impact of those derivatives, we don't know what they are. Some of them create a less potent high than traditional THC marijuana. Some of them create a more potent high. Some of them can cause a kid to test positive for marijuana. Some of them can't. It just kind of depends. Technically, they're still illegal if you're under 21 because in the state of Texas, you cannot possess a vape device if you're under the age of 21. But they're out there, and they're available at the gas station. There are multiple gas stations in our area, some of them right off the highway, where if you pulled up and looked, you would see a big flashing Delta 8 or Delta 10 sign. So they can be purchased over the counter just like a nicotine vape could be. So, and they're easily accessible. They come in lots of different forms. Again, they come in the vape forms. They come in gummy forms and edible forms, right? They're doing lots of different things. And looking at these colors, who do you think they're marketing to with some of these colors? I'm so sorry. Look, I switched on my computer. With looking at these colors, who do you think they're marketing to? They're marketing to kids, right? I mean, those kind of colors are meant for adolescents. They're meant to draw the attention of the young people. So they're a target audience, while legally is not supposed to be used in young adults because of the age restrictions. It's very much targeted towards them. The other thing that happens in that THC realm is edibles. Edibles, if you don't know anything about them, are basically they've taken that THC and they've infused it in a food product. Edibles can come every single food under the sun, as long as it is something that is manufactured. So the issues with the edibles is they take longer to take effect. If you're vaping, getting high, smoking weed, takes 30 seconds to a minute to feel high. With an edible, you're looking at 30 minutes to 2 hours to feel high. The problem with that is a lot of times the dosage for an edible is like half of the product. Or maybe just one cookie. We're talking about our little Oreo cookies up there, right? Now, how many of you can A, eat just one cookie? And B, if you're a teenager and you're looking for a high and you've eaten one cookie and 15 minutes has passed and you don't feel a high, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to eat another cookie, right? And when you get enough cookies in your system or enough brownies or whatever the case be, you can have what's we call marijuana toxicity, right? And so they can have unpredictable results if they have marijuana toxicity from eating this. And so, it's a problem, right? They can have, sometimes the kids will call it a green out, right? They'll kind of spaz out, they'll kind of be higher than they expected, and it'll last longer than they thought they would. And so it can put them in risky situations, especially if they're used to the high wearing off within a certain amount of time, and they find themselves under the influence much longer than anticipated. The other issue when we talk about edibles is who is that attractive to? Not just our teenagers, who else? Small kiddos, right? If you have small kiddos or kiddos who don't know any better and they see those Stony Patch Kids or those Stonios or those nerds, are they going to necessarily right off realize what has happened or what's in them? And so we run into an issue if an older sibling or somebody has brought them into a house and a curious younger sibling does what a curious younger sibling does and goes and digs those little snacks out, then we have a different situation happening, right? Because when we work on that 17-year-old and what works on that 5-year-old are very, very different. Do you guys have questions about THC and vaping? Because that's a lot of information in a short amount of time. No? Yeah.
I don't know about laws associated with the edibles and then how's that when you find out without seeing the package. Because if there are kids that are eating things without seeing the package, they don't know.
So laws related to edibles, and Chief, you can correct me if there's something I'm missing, as well as our THC concentrates, is anything that is a THC concentrate, which would be what's in an edible and what's in a vape, is a felony in the state of Texas. Now, as far as detecting if there's THC in that food, typically it has to go off to the lab. I don't even think our at-home test kits where you touch it would even probably do anything with that. Yeah. So, other than seeing if the printing on, if you can see the package, that's one thing. We're seeing that things for the Stonios or the Sour Patch Kids, if there's any difference in them. But unfortunately, because they're meant to mimic the real thing, it's really hard to tell. Yeah.
Where are those sold?
So they're not legally sold in the state of Texas. However, they get imported in from neighboring states where they are legal to sell. They can be shipped in via various carriers like UPS, or not necessarily via Amazon, but via various carriers from out of the state. Or people can just pop on over to a neighboring state and pick them up and bring them back. They are sometimes sold in what we would call head shops or places that sell paraphernalia, maybe behind the counter, those kind of things. So yeah, there's just different ways to get to them. They do make, when we talk about these edibles, they make the Delta 8 version of these too. And those are available at your head shops and your gas stations, which does cause confusion. They're legal. Yeah. So, which causes
Marketed like that, where they're obviously breaking copyright rules for the Oreos and Sour Patch Kids stuff.
That would be something that the maker, Nabisco, would have to take up with the manufacturer, right? So
there's a few articles you can find about some of the companies cease and desist orders to, if they can find who's making the packaging.
And that's the biggest issue, sometimes finding words.
Yeah, which, so it's not always worth their time and effort to do it because someone really makes it cost too much for them to not go after it. But there's a few that they tried to, but then they tried.
One of the things that it showed is some dabbing. Is that popular? I don't hear about that.
So, dabbing, it was popular for a while. It's not as popular these days, I think, just because it's kind of harder to access, and the access to THC vapes or the access to the deltas is so much easier, requires so much less effort on their part, that access to things like concentrates, dabs, or somebody has made that in their house and is selling it, just is a lot more trouble than probably the average teenager is going to go through. So,
How are they doing?
So THC concentrates in the vape pens are going to be in oil, and they're going to be in that device that you heat up. Dabs and waxes are typically, you guys can see that kind of waxy looking material. They're in that format. They're a THC concentrate like that. And they'll heat them either in a device like that one and inhale and vape them the same way. Or they can get as simple as they can hold that little metal spoon that they're using over a lighter and inhale the smoke that way. I've had kids who will do it on the end of a spoon, on the end of a knife. I mean, I've had kids tell me that they had special bongs to do them in if they wanted to. They had dab bongs. Some just did it on the stovetop. So they're very creative. The reality is that they have access to lots of information. TikTok and YouTube will teach them how to use it. They will get access to people who deal it and deliver it pretty easily. They can have it via their particular social media platform of their choice. A lot of kids will say they can have it delivered just like they could have something delivered via Uber Eats. That easy for them. Other questions about marijuana, THC, vaping? All right. Let's talk about opioids and fentanyl. So for years, I will say, I'll caveat this, for years we have focused on safe storage of medications and safe disposal as a way to keep youth prescription abuse down. We are still focusing on that. It's still critical to keep your prescription medications, your over-the-counter medications like your cough and cold medicines, safely stored and out of the reach of not only your little people, but out of your big people, because they are still being abused. This is especially important if you have medications like painkillers, ADHD meds, anti-anxiety meds like Xanax, right? Muscle relaxants, again, those cough and cold medicines. However, for the sake of time tonight, we're not going to go into all of those because we're really going to focus kind of on the opioids and the fentanyl. But if you have questions about them, feel free and we will happily talk about it. So, first thing is what an opioid. We know you guys got this. Opioids are a substance used to treat pain. They bind to the opioid receptors in the brain, and opioids can be natural, as in they're derived from the opium poppy, which is where we get heroin from, okay? Or they can be synthetic, made to act like things that come from the opium poppy, or they can be semi-synthetic, a mixture of it. Easy enough. All right. 14% of students have reported using a prescription opioid without a doctor's authorization, which means they got it from a family member, a friend, something like that. All right. So. Let's do a little quiz. While counterfeit's not a new phenomenon, it's become a significant issue in the last 2 years. So let's see here. The oxycodone, which one is the real one? The top one or the bottom one? What do y'all think? You're right, it is the top one. All right, the Adderall, which is the real one, the top or the bottom? The top one. All right, and for our Xanax, the right or the left?
Right.
The left one. All right, so when we compare them side by side, we can sometimes notice natural differences. But if you were just looking at the pills without their counterpart, could you tell the difference? Yeah, realistically, because pill counterfeiting has gotten so good, the only way to tell the difference these days is to like use a test strip on it. So, all right, so let's talk about fentanyl, which is what's often in these counterfeit pills. Fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. It is 100 times more powerful than morphine and 50 times more powerful than heroin. All right. And we've traditionally used by doctors to treat severe chronic pain, oftentimes those who are experiencing cancer. It is illegally manufactured. Fentanyl is responsible for increased overdose deaths. So you guys see that little bit that's on the tip of that pencil? That will cause an overdose. That little amount will cause an overdose. So why is it so dangerous? Those who manufacture counterfeit pills have used fentanyl to increase the amount that they can produce, thus increasing the amount of money they can make, right? So what they do is they mix fentanyl with other substances, but when they do that, it's not equally blended. So we get kind of this chocolate chip effect. You guys ever made chocolate chip cookies? I made brownies this last weekend, but I made chocolate chip this weekend for my kid. And I know when we throw the chocolate chips in, we mix them in and we bake up these chocolate chip cookies. And my kid gets a cookie and he's got like all the chocolate chips in, and I get one that's got 2. Same thing happens with fentanyl. Is they mix it in and they'll do all this, but that fentanyl does not distribute evenly. And so someone may get a pill that might have, for the sake of our example, 3 chocolate chips and be fine, and someone gets a pill that has 5 chocolate chips and causes a lethal overdose. Okay? And this is how we can have 2 kids who are here at the same place at the same time, and one of them has an overdose and the other one doesn't. The problem is right now, the estimates are 4 out of 10 pills, like illegally obtained pills in the state of Texas or in the nation, contain a lethal amount of fentanyl. So this is such a big deal because in 2020, we had 883 people die in Texas from fentanyl-related overdoses. Oh, let me do this. Okay. In 2021, it was 1,600 or 1,600. Okay. In that 1 year, we went up 89%. In 2022, that number is higher. All right. So what do? I always like to talk about why. So if you see someone and you think they're having an overdose, my fabulous Nurse Brown can also attest to this as well. If you see someone and they cannot be woken up and they're not moving, if they have discolored or blue lips or nails, if their breathing is very slow or absent, if they are choking, gurgling, or making weird snoring sounds, their pupils are very small, they have cold or clammy skin, or they have, like, they're super dizzy, you probably need to call 911 because they may very well be experiencing an overdose. I always like to tell my kids in the state of Texas, there's a Good Samaritan law, and the name of it has escaped me. It's the Sosa Act. It's the Jessica Sosa Act, I believe. And that law will prevent a person from getting prosecuted for being guilty of other behaviors if they report that someone is having an overdose, if they call 911 and stay with the person, and if they cooperate with the law. So those things have to happen. I know with you. Those things have to happen for that person to be fall under the Good Samaritan law, right? And so I always like to tell my teenagers, I said, if you think someone is having an overdose, you need to call 911, because if you don't call 911 and something happens and they die, then you are then liable. So
that's to protect people. That's awesome. So you have a third party.
Yep.
Not going to be prosecuted.
Yes.
Awesome.
So as long as you stay and you cooperate. So. And with any good fentanyl presentation, I like to talk about the Naloxone. Okay. Naloxone, which is what I call the generic name of Narcan. It also can come under the name Taloxidone. It is a life-saving medication that can reverse an opioid overdose temporarily. What it does is it comes in the form of a nasal spray in a lot of situations. There's also an injectable version, and your EMTs have different versions as well. It's administered just like a nasal spray in the nose. It works to basically block the opioid receptors in the brain from picking up any more of the opioid, almost instantly reversing the overdose. They will come back within 1 minute. Okay, if they don't come back within 1 minute, I would say give the second dose. There's typically 2 of these in a box. The great thing about naloxone is that if you give it to someone who you think is experiencing an opioid overdose, and this can be from fentanyl, this can be from painkillers, if they are not experiencing an overdose, it doesn't harm them. The Surgeon General now says that naloxone should be kept in your first aid kits just like you would with a CPR mask. And now naloxone is even available for purchase over the counter. No more do you have to have a prescription or an open prescription. You can now purchase it over the counter. So it's a great thing. I highly recommend it for anyone who works with youth or even has an older parent who may be on painkillers. Because we know as we get older, we also get forgetful. And did I take my medication today? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, maybe I forgot that I took my medication, and I go back and I take another dose of my medication, and now I've got too much of my painkiller in my system, right? So I highly recommend it. So as of September this month, it is available over the counter for purchase. So, all right, questions about fentanyl? All right, then let's talk about what to look for. Because no good current drug trends would be complete without talking about what are we looking for in our kids. Because I can tell you all the information you know about the drugs if you don't know how to recognize what's happening. So there's lots of different signs and symptoms of substance use issues in youth. And I will say a lot of these issues overlap with mental health concerns as well. So when we talk about these, a lot of these are just red flags to say, hey, pay attention, something is going on, all right? So when we talk about substance use specifically though, physical warning signs, bloodshot eyes, changes in the way they look, changes in appetite, sleep patterns, weight gain, weight loss, changes in physical appearance and personal grooming habits. I used to work with a young lady at another district, and I would see her once a week. We would do some different groups, and I could tell you when she was having a good week, and I could tell you when she was having a bad week, based on how she appeared that week. Also, if they have unusual smells on their breath or body or clothing, or they're using, and they're not a middle school boy, an enormous amount of Axe body spray, okay, and then, or if they have tremors, slurred speech, or impaired coordination. Behavioral signs. All right. Major changes in attendance to school, performance at school, grades. That's a big one. Their grades start dropping. That's a time to say, hey, what's happening here? Unexplained need for money, right? They're always out of lunch money. Always need more lunch money, right? What you have on their cash account is not going to work. Engaging in secretive or suspicious behaviors. This can be hard in our teenagers to kind of sometimes ferret out. But we know they're like, this is seeming a little sus right now. We're like, you're being extra secretive with me. Time to pay attention. Sudden changes in friends, favorite hangouts, or hobbies. They used to do something and they don't do that anymore. And they give you some lame excuse about why they do that anymore. That's a great time to pay attention. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with kids over the years that used to do something. They used to be in band, football, dance, whatever the case may be. They used to do it. Or because the other thing that happens when we talk about moving through the stages of addiction is that they will hang out with the people that share their passion. Well, the more people, the further they are into it, the less time they spend with people who aren't sharing their passion, right? And substance use is the passion. And then frequently getting into trouble, fights, illegal activities, or getting caught with paraphernalia or substances. Your kid tells you they were just holding that vape for a friend. I would look at that a little bit closer, okay? Or they say, but mom, I just tried it for the first time, but they've got their own vape. That's like, that's not how this process works. So that's a great thing. That's a major red flag. All right, and then psychological warning signs, major changes in personality, mood swings, anger outbursts. Periods of really hyperactivity, or on the opposite end, just very low mood, or having anxiety or paranoia with real no reason. So those are warning signs to just pay attention. Say, what's going on, right? So we think we have a problem. What do? Some things that you can happen. You realize, okay, we got an issue. The first one is lay down the rules and consequences. I know this seems pretty like common sense, but sometimes we have to lay down the rules and consequences we can stick with. And that's the hard part of it. So you have to make consequences that you can uphold. If you say, I'm going to take your phone for 2 days, you really do have to take their phone for 2 days, right? And make sure in this instance that your co-parent, if your co-parenting agrees with you on what's going to happen. Otherwise, your consequences are not going to be as effective. Monitor your kids' activity. Gosh, I keep telling these kind of things, but over the years, how many kids I've had who have that one friend who has that parent that it's okay with them drinking or smoking at their house. And they have the attitude, I would rather they do it here. Okay? Know where your teen goes, who they hang out with, and who the parents are of the kids they hang out with. All right? Check their phone, check their room. If they have broken trust and they've gotten in trouble with it, then one of the consequences often has to be, I am going to check your room, check your belongings, check your phone, all of those things. They don't like it, but that's all right. We're their mamas and their daddies, not their besties. All right. Another thing that you can do is encourage their other interests in social activities. A busy kid has less time to get in trouble. Doesn't mean they won't get in trouble, but they have less time to get in trouble. Expose them to healthy hobbies, activities, even if it's going to the gym or going to youth group or volunteering somewhere, right? Helping mow somebody's grass, but keeping them busy is a great way to help offset this. And then talk to them about the underlying issues. In my experience, substance use is often the symptom of something else going on. Are they having trouble fitting in? Are they struggling in school? Are they wanting to be accepted and they think this is the way to do it? Are they stressed out? Are they struggling with a mental health issue, right? Or they have undiagnosed ADHD, whatever the case may be. Find out what's going on. And lastly, get help. Because if you can't talk to your kids, find somebody who can. Nobody pushes our kids' buttons better than us. And nobody pushes our buttons better than our own babies. Okay? So sometimes it's hard to have those conversations. But if they can hear the same information from someone that's not their parent, they sometimes hear it more easily, right? And getting help can look in a lot of different ways. It can be your school counselor. It can be an outside therapist. It can be Auntie Susie. It can be your clergy person, right? Help can look a lot of different ways. It can be a mentor. But just finding someone that they can talk to. I mean, even as someone who's worked in the field of social work for over a long time, for 20 years, my own children will hear things from other people differently than they hear it from me. It's not that they haven't heard it from me, but they hear it differently from other people, and then they absorb it differently. So, all right, that is the end of that presentation. Do you guys have questions, or what? Or how can I answer questions for you guys? Yeah.
They still drug test in school. I don't have a daughter with that.
I don't know that I can speak to the district drug testing policy. It is a random drug screen, which is basically the same way that most districts do it, in my experience. So, great question. Other questions that I can answer for you guys?
A successful way where other school districts have dealt with the bathroom, and the drugs being in the bathroom, being sold in the bathroom. My second freshman in the first 3 weeks, we saw 3 drug buys for vapes. So whatever.
In Red Oak, we have the Report It app, so he can report those kind of things, I believe. We get a text message, the see it, stop it. So, and there's vape detection units at the secondary campus. I think that is an issue that every district that I know of and work with struggles with is just the things that go down in the bathrooms, regardless of what the activities are. It's a challenge for every school that I've worked with. So we are not alone in that challenge. Everybody tries different strategies, and some of them are more effective than others, or they're effective for a while. I think it's just an ongoing process of educating kids when they see something happening to report it, so that other kids will learn, hey, if I do it here, I am going to get reported, so I need to stay away from the fine arts bathroom. And then
That's all.
yeah, so what Chief just said was use that Stop It app to give that child a sense of anonymity, but they can still report the issue. And then just empowering our kids to make good choices, even though regardless of what people around them are doing. That's the other thing, is to just, how can we empower our kids to make the right choices, regardless of what someone else is doing. Yeah, unfortunately, if I ever find that magic wand, I will definitely let you know. So, great question.
Oh, short answer is yes.
Any other questions?
So why is there such an increase? Is it because of the monetary gain for fentanyl? The more is coming across the border?
Because they can so why is there such an increase? Because they can manufacture large amounts relatively cheaply, and then with that they have great monetary gain because it just takes a little bit of fentanyl to mimic whatever effect they're looking for. So then what normally would have been pre-fentanyl, you were selling 5 hydrocodone, now you can manufacture something that mimics hydrocodone, and you can manufacture them 20 of them for the cost that it maybe to obtain 5,
It's also huge increase.
Yes. It's just availability. It's a lot of supply. So, any other questions? Okay. Well, I appreciate your time tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Look, we are under the wire. It's perfect. So, if you guys have other questions, feel free to email me or reach out to via our website. We're always happy to answer questions. If I don't know the answer, I will try to find it. So, thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much.